Hello everyone, my name is The Humble Gamer and welcome to a very special video. Today's video is my 1000th video on this YouTube channel. In almost 7 years, we're 1 month shy of 7 years being here, and I have just reached 1,000 videos. Some people would have reached that years ago, but I don't upload daily, so that's not me. So I rattled my head a lot for what I could do for 1,000 videos, something special, because honestly I had no fucking idea until recently. But then something beautiful happened, a new trend, because it happens all the time, but most of them are shit. But there was a new trend recently that really just took me by surprise, and I thought, you know what? This is something I can do, and that is the 3x3 trend. Now, this has been around for a long time, which is, just to explain, the 3x3 is a grid of 3x3, 9 squares, and people will put various different things in these grids, their favourite movies, their favourite games, and of course I'm going to be doing the latter, because I've seen quite a few YouTubers do it in the last couple of weeks alone, and I feel like it's the perfect time to do that. 1,000 videos for me personally. I'm also the humble gamer, I play video games, and it would be nice to talk about the games that really made my childhood. And I'm going to have to explain a little bit prior to actually showing you the 3x3. This is going to be a pretty long video, by the way. But these games are pretty spread out. Most of them are from the 2000s. There is one that's from 2010. So they are kind of recent. They're not childhood. I didn't grow up in my formative years between like 1 and 7 years old playing a lot of video games. Most of it was just kind of taking the controller every now and then and just fiddling about a bit. I did play a couple of games, but it wasn't until I was like 7, 8 years old that I really dug into video games, and by then it was the mid-2000s. So yeah, a lot of these games are from that era, but of course there are a couple of exceptions. So with that said, let's jump in to the first of these 9 games. So let's unblur the first one, the top right, top left. God, I can't tell my left from my right. The top left, Banjo-Kazooie, of course. Now, this is obvious. Banjo-Kazooie is obvious for me, because I've said many times across my history on this channel so far, Banjo-Kazooie is one of my favourite games of all time. It's hard to really pin down exactly why. Every element of Banjo-Kazooie is built from the ground up to be the perfect version of what it can be. If you're looking at it from a fundamentally game design level, it's very well designed. It has themed levels, it has great music, it's design for its collecting is very rewarding. Instead of the Banjo-Tooie kind of style where you have to really work for your reward, Kazooie has everything kind of right there in the open. You know, you still have to work for your reward, but it's a lot more linear, a lot easier. There is some hard stuff thrown in there as well, of course, but it was a lot easier than its sequel. Now, I wanted to tie it with Tooie for this spot, but I had to choose Kazooie over Tooie because it's the obvious choice. It was the first game, it was my first game, or one of my first really, that I really fell in love with, and just had to take that spot. But I do love Tooie as well. As much as it gets shit on a lot, I really liked Tooie. I liked the expansion on the ideas in the first game. The music was still great, the mechanics was still great, the world design was still absolutely fantastic, and I had a lot of fun actually wandering around the big open worlds and trying to find the stuff that I was missing. Pages and music notes and jiggies, although it was not usually music notes that I was hunting for because they were all in little nests and were usually very easy to find. But the jiggies could sometimes be very difficult to find, and some of the challenges in that game were pretty hard for young me. I remember struggling a lot just with the dynamite mission in Glitter Gulch Mine. That was really tough. But yeah, you know, Banjo-Kazooie takes the cake for that spot, you know, but Tooie was still great. So that's spot number 1. So let's undo spot number 2 now. And spot number 2 is Tony Hawk's Underground 2. Of course. Now, it's going to come as a shock because when I was a young child, I used to watch my brother play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, 2, and 3 a lot. And even Underground 1. weirdly though, by the time I actually really sat down to play one of the Tony Hawk's games myself, the game that I became infatuated with was Underground 2. That was the game I really fell in love with. I wasn't very fond of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 because I didn't like the controls. Pro Skater 2 was fine. Pro Skater 3 I played a lot more. But Underground as well I played some. But Underground 2 was the game I played a lot. That was the Tony Hawk's game I really dug into a lot and played over and over and over and over again. And I think it was just sort of part of the culture for me. I grew up watching a lot of Jackass, CKY, Viva La Bam because my brothers would let me watch it with them. So seeing those guys doing their thing in a video game was super cool. Right, I got interrupted there for a second, but yeah, seeing them in their element, doing their thing, back when it was still relevant, when Jackass and Viva La Bam and all that was still relevant, was great for me personally. I know a lot of people don't like Underground 2 and I can understand why, but for me personally, I really enjoyed it. It was just another Tony Hawk's game. It had the same elements, but it had a lot more humour in there that was very Jackass, and that was something I really enjoyed taking part in. So for me, that's the reason why I like Underground 2 more than the other Tony Hawk's. I still love the other Tony Hawk's games, but Underground 2 was the one I really invested a lot of my time into. So number 3, Spongebob SquarePants, Battle for Bikini Bottom. Now, I did play the remake very recently, as it stands, and I think I made my point during that remake of why I liked Battle for Bikini Bottom, but I should add some context. So, when I was young, and I didn't really have access to a lot of consoles of my own, my first console was a PlayStation 2, and the games that I used to play on it were very limited. And the games that I played the most were a couple that I've got on this list, and of course one of them is SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. I used to play the SpongeBob games a lot. Revenge of the Flying Dutchman, the movie game, and Battle for Bikini Bottom were 3 games that I played a lot over and over and over again on the PS2 before I ended up getting a 360. So that's why Bikini Bottom is on here. It was my favourite of the 3. I could never finish the movie game. I could always get to the end of the movie game, but I could never finish it. My mum was always the one who would finish the final boss of that game because I just could not get past the final patty race for myself for some reason. So it was always my mother who would do the final lap of the game, as it were, for me. But for Battle for Bikini Bottom, I could play through the whole thing, pretty much complete it almost 100% except for the socks. And it was super fun doing so, and it was something that I just played over and over and over again. I enjoyed actually taking part in a SpongeBob episode, as it were, because that's how Bikini Bottom was kind of laid out, as if you were in a SpongeBob episode. I was a big fan of SpongeBob when I was a kid, and so was my mum as well, which is why she enjoyed playing it, and so that's why it's on the list. Honestly, after Tony Hawk's, it shouldn't come as much of a shock that I played SpongeBob, because as PS2 games go, it was one of the most popular PS2 games. If you walked into a shop where they sold PlayStation 2 games at the time, which was every gaming shop, it would be right there on the center shelf, usually, because it was one of the popular games on the PlayStation 2. The SpongeBob movie game, Battle for Bikini Bottom, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Call of Duty, Half-Life. You'd see a lot of that stuff just right there on the shelf. So, you know, it was a very popular game at the time, and for me, it was just a game that was super enjoyable for a young me, really getting into video games, and so it deserves a place on this list for that reason. Alright, so, next spot on the list, Thrillville, Off the Rails. So, I wanted to put Thrillville in this spot. And I did mention with SpongeBob that there were other PS2 games on this list. Unfortunately, this is the last one. But Thrillville Off the Rails, of the 2 Thrillville games, was one of the games that I played a lot as a kid. And it really got me into that genre of theme park building. Something which I've never really gone back to, but I've admired since I was a child. And as a game that I played for hours and hours and hours as a kid, I really could not put it on this list. Thrillville Off the Rails was the sequel to Thrillville, for anybody not in the know. Thrillville was a roller coaster building game, but a very, I don't want to call it childish, but a very kid-friendly roller coaster builder. I think Roller Coaster Tycoon, except very limited, but very fun for kids to play. And for me as a kid, that was perfect. It had a lot of very 2000s music in its soundtrack, which may have added to the appeal for me, because it was a lot of music from people who I knew as a kid. And it was just it's very strange going back to Thrillville now and Thrillville Off the Rails and listening to the soundtracks, because it's just filled with that very early 2000s cheese. But it was still super fun as a kid, and even today I have a little bit of fun playing it. There was a lot of mini games. Every single machine that you put down, even the vending machines, had a mini game attached to them, and you could get high scores. You could spend almost hours playing the games that you actually put down in the parks in Thrillville, which was super cool. You didn't just build a theme park, you actually got to be a part of the theme park, to play the rides. You know, the arcades that you put down, you could actually play the arcades. You could play the games that you put down. Bandito Chinchilla and Robot Wars and the vending machine game. There were so many. And the roller coasters, you could actually ride them. You could actually interact with the people in the theme park, make friends, find love for some reason. So, you know, that's a thing in Thrillville. But all of it just really blended together for me to make a really fun experience that I loved playing over and over again. So I was really happy with Thrillville Off the Rails, and of the two Thrillville games, that one definitely is my favourite. And for that reason, it makes the place on my list. Alright, we get to the latter half of the list now, and we start with Banjo-Kazooie, Nuts and Bolts. I really struggled with whether I would include this on the list or not, since I have also put Banjo-Kazooie up at the top there. But Nuts and Bolts was a game in the late 2000s I played so much. I enjoyed it to a degree that a lot of Banjo-Kazooie fans would probably deem me to be not a true Banjo-Kazooie fan, because I love Nuts and Bolts so much. But I just don't see the problem with it. I love Kazooie and Tooie as much as any Kazooie and Tooie fan, or Kazooie or Tooie fan. I don't know many people who are fans of both. But, you know, as much as people are fans of those games, I'm a fan of Nuts and Bolts. I really like it. It has the same sort of humour as the other Kazooie games. It does have platforming, and it has many of the elements of other Banjo-Kazooie games. You collect music notes, you get jiggies from doing missions. Of course, the whole thing is just centred around building vehicles. And I really enjoyed that element of the game. I really liked sitting there building custom vehicles of all kinds, just playing around with that feature. It was one of my favourite things to do in the late 2000s, was playing Nuts and Bolts over and over again so that I could just build different kinds of vehicles for the same missions to see what worked best and what didn't work. And it was always just super fun. It still had a great soundtrack, at least I thought it did anyway. And all in all was just a really fun experience for me, just like any of the other games I've put on this list. So even though it may not be the best classic Banjo-Kazooie game, to me it's still a Banjo-Kazooie game, to a degree. And I can't not put it on this list for that reason, because it was one of my favourite games in the late 2000s, and I played it so many fucking times, it would be stupid of me not to include it on my 3x3. Okay, so the next one is going to come as a bit of a shock. Reveal. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Now, the reason I've included this is because of all of the shooter games that I played in the late 2000s, early 2010s, Modern Warfare 2 was the first. And it was the game that got me into the genre in the first place. It was the game that got me into first-person shooters. It was the game that got me into that whole community, you know, the online harassment, if you want to call it that, of the multiplayer community of Modern Warfare and Call of Duty in general. And it's just a very unique part of my gaming history that I really enjoyed. And even though I didn't play Modern Warfare or any other Call of Duty for that matter as much as I have other games on this list, it's still super important because it's the first of its kind that I played. And I have very fond memories of coming home from school and getting into a party with friends and just going into the multiplayer and just having fun with it. We used to do the Spec Ops missions together as well, which was super fun. And the campaign was actually really interesting. I enjoyed the campaigns of the Modern Warfare games. I liked the story spread out across the 3 games. I always found it really interesting, even though it was fictional. But it was just a genuinely well-written story, to me at least, when I was younger. So for that reason, I put it on the list, because I think it fits. I think it fits there perfectly. I wish there were more to say about Modern Warfare 2, but unfortunately there's not really a lot of evidence of me playing it from the time. There's like a couple of videos of me playing it with some people, and other than that, the only thing we have is memories. And the memories I have of Modern Warfare 2 are quite blurry, because I also played Black Ops and Black Ops 2 and Modern Warfare 3, and it all kind of blends together, and it gets a bit confusing to try and remember exactly what it was about Modern Warfare 2 that I liked. But the one thing I do remember was the campaign and the fond memories of getting in parties with friends and playing multiplayer together. So that's why it's here on the list in the first place. Alright. Time to get to number 7 on this 9 square grid. We see that it is Just Cause 2. Just Cause 2. Oh, there's a lot to say about Just Cause. Just Cause 2 was my first foray into Just Cause. I eventually went on to play the first game, and, well, I played number 3 first, and then I went back to the first game. But the point is, I did play the other Just Cause games eventually. Just Cause 2 was my introduction, though. And Just Cause 2 is a bit of a mixed bag, because honestly, I don't remember finishing it. I did actually finish it. I did beat the final boss of Just Cause 2, but I just do not remember finishing it whatsoever. For me, the fun of the game was just the open worldedness, exploring a big open world, finding the collectibles that gave you money and vehicle and gun upgrades and whatnot, and just kind of, I don't know, just the gliding around the world, flying around the big open world, all the secrets you could find and everything. It was a completely unique experience that I'd never had before. Just Cause 2 came out at a time when open world games just weren't like that yet. There wasn't big, open, expansive worlds that you could explore all of. You know, like, this was something rare at that time. And Just Cause 2 was my first experience into that, and there's been plenty more games like it since, with the big open worlds to explore, like Far Cry and other Ubisoft games like Assassin's Creed and whatnot, but and other games that aren't Ubisoft, but Just Cause 2 was my first experience with that kind of thing, and so I value it a lot for that, and had to put it on the list. In terms of open world games, you know, I could have put Minecraft on here, you know, for the sandboxiness, but Just Cause 2 actually beat out Minecraft in that for me, in terms of being the first game I played with a big open world that you could explore. You'd think I would have put Minecraft on this list, honestly, but you know what? I didn't play Minecraft till like early 2011, late 2010. So it's just not a game that fits into the list in terms of games I played when I was a lot younger. So Just Cause 2 for me has to take that slot, since it was in the late 2000s, and it was the first game of its kind with the big open world that I really played and enjoyed. So yeah, that fits on the list for that reason. Alright, second to last, Super Mario Galaxy 2. Holy shit. This is a game I played fucking way too much. I played Galaxy 2 all the way through to 240 stars several times. I didn't play it as much as Kazooie, mind you, but I played it almost as much. Galaxy 1 was a lot of fun, but Galaxy 2 got me so addicted. Galaxy 1 I did play a few times, but Galaxy 2 I played way more than like twice as much as the first game. It was an experience for me. It really was. I had a lot of fun. The music was fantastic. The world design was great. The actual kind of loop, the going into the world, getting the stars, getting taken out, doing it all over again, unlocking new worlds as you got more stars and stuff. Just that loop somehow really fucking hooked me. And then hunting for the green stars at the end as well, once you had the first 120, and then doing the last 2 stars to get 242 was just, there was something really fun about that. And I have such fond memories of sitting downstairs, coming home from school and just sitting there for like 3 hours playing Super Mario Galaxy 2, trying to get as many stars as I could in the little free time I had to play the game as possible. So Galaxy 2 just definitely deserves a place on this list for that reason. I could have put Galaxy 1 there because I did love Galaxy 1, but Galaxy 2 was just the game I played more and the game I loved a lot more. So, and it had Yoshi, you know? Like, how could I not put the game there when it has Yoshi? I really wish there was something more I could say about Galaxy 2, but honestly, I think it was perfect, just the way it was. And I'm glad that Galaxy 1 got a sequel because they were able to expand on what made the first game great and make an even better second game, in my opinion. The first game, there were 240 stars in the first game, but it was a technicality. You basically got the same 120 stars with Mario, and then you unlocked Luigi, and you could get the 120 stars again with Luigi. So you basically played the game twice with Mario and then with Luigi. And that was cool for the time, but with Galaxy 2, you actually got the 120 stars, and then you unlocked 120 green stars scattered around the world you'd already been in, and you had to actually really work hard to find those stars. And then once you actually got all of those 120 stars, then you had to go and do 2 more stars in a secret world, which were really tough. And I just thought, yeah, this is it. Like, this is the game. This is the one. This is way better than number 1 is. You know, that's why I can't put number 1 in this spot. So yeah, that's I hope that's a good explanation of why I put Galaxy 2 there and not Galaxy 1. Sorry, Galaxy 1 fans. And the last game on my 3x3 is, of course, The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. Of all of the Zelda games that exist or existed at that time, there was Wind Waker, there was Ocarina, there was Majora's Mask, there was all the 2D Zeldas. There was... Actually, yeah, no, there was no other 3D Zeldas at that time. There was no Skyward Sword, no Breath of the Wild. But Twilight Princess, I think... I don't remember playing the game more than once or twice, but the memories have stuck with me despite that. And I have been meaning to play it again recently, to a point where I actually bought the guide for the HD version on the Wii U. So I actually have the collector's strategy guide for that version of the game, so that it can help me get the gist and get back into it. But at some point soon I will need to start a new save on that and play it again, because it's been a good 10 years since I played Twilight Princess. And it is a game that I have remembered to a degree where I may not even need the strategy guide when I actually play it again. It's just very cool to have the strategy guide on the shelf, honestly. But Twilight Princess, something about it compared to other Zelda games, you know, since then I've played Ocarina, I've played Wind Waker, I've played Skyward Sword, I played Breath of the Wild, and honestly, none of them make me feel the way that Twilight Princess does. Breath of the Wild makes me feel a certain way. Twilight Princess just makes me feel... I can't even describe it. That's how it makes me feel. I can't even describe it. Something about the level of storytelling in Twilight Princess, the effort they went to tell an actually decent Zelda story, and the level of drama that was actually involved in that game compared to some of the other Zelda games. I mean, Ocarina has a lot of drama, but honestly it doesn't touch me in the same way as Twilight Princess does. I'm not sure why. I'm really not sure, because I do feel that Ocarina probably has far more dramatic moments than Twilight Princess does. But basically, to me personally, I feel like Twilight Princess has a lot more drama than Ocarina, but I can't explain why. So, and that's not because I have a reason, I just don't want to explain. It's because I literally don't have a reason. That's just how I personally feel. I felt a lot more touched by Twilight Princess's story than I did by Ocarina's story. I still felt touched by Ocarina's story, but not as much as Twilight Princess's story. And the dungeon design, the music, the world was just so unique. I mean, every Zelda game has a pretty unique version of Hyrule, but Twilight Princess has stuck with me since I first played it, and I look forward to going back into it, I honestly do. But for those reasons, Twilight Princess really deserves a place on this list, I think, of all of the games I played during that era, because I hadn't really played any other Zeldas. I'd watched my brother play Ocarina, I'd never seen Wind Waker or Majora's Mask, Skyward Sword hadn't come out yet. I don't think there were any other 3D Zeldas I'd seen at that time. There were like the 2D games. I think I might have, like, just as I was playing Twilight Princess for the first time, I might have seen like some videos on YouTube of people playing 2D Zelda games, like A Link to the Past or A Link Between Worlds. But in terms of the other 3D Zeldas, I hadn't even really heard of them at the time I played Twilight Princess. So it was actually technically my first Zelda game, my first real Zelda game, 2D or 3D or otherwise, that I'd actually played myself. Which might be why it has so much more sentimental value to me, and why its story touches me more even today than the other Zelda game stories do. So yeah, that is my video game 3x3. I thought this video would end up a bit longer, but fortunately it's actually ended up rather short. Especially once I've cut a bunch of stuff. This will probably end up 25 minutes, 20-25 minutes, which is not bad at all. It's a pretty sizable video. I've given a nice little kind of background into my childhood games, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed listening to me talk about my favourite childhood games. It is something that I quite admire, this whole 3x3 thing that's going on at the moment. People talking about their favourite childhood games or their favourite movies and things like that. It's actually quite a nice little fad. Better than a lot of other fucking fads that pop up now and then. So yeah, I'm glad it happened so that it could inspire me to do one myself, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in whatever I make next. Bye bye!